So, வாழ்க வளமுடன். Thanks for having me, Tarun and Morgan and others. I think the bar would have been set high up earlier on with the session from Tarun, I believe. So I have a few disclaimers to start with. My mother tongue is Tamil, so I'll be primarily speaking in English, but I'll be introducing some Tamil words here and there. So please do bear with me. And even as I speak in Tamil, people say that I'm speaking very fast. So with English, it is going to be even worse. So pause me whenever I'm going too fast or I'm not able to be like give myself clearly what I'm speaking with all the is and this. So that's one disclaimer. And I'm also going to assume that people here are in two categories, and I also wanted you to be thinking in that mode. One is like either you could take yourself as like a fifth grader student who is very smart, but he hasn't done much of the scriptures, and you basically you don't know the scriptures like the Quran and other things, but you're a very smart fifth grader student. Or you are a grandma or a grandpa who is very experienced, but again not read all the prose and poems and other things. So I'm assuming that you are one of these two categories. The reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to define something from scratch without any bias, without any predetermined notions. So with that, we'll try to see, okay, how we could help us define some of the problem statements. So coming to what I'm trying to speak here, right? Following the introspections and some of the sessions from the SKY courses, one of the important things is like, why are we the way we are, right? What makes us define our own self? And again, when I say self, it's not a philosophical self that we usually get confused and think deeper, right? It's nothing on the philosophical side, but a logical attempt to define our characteristics traits. So, I mean, we always, and at times we say, right, I didn't realize that I had the talent. We always say that way, right? When forced with a particular scenario, we behave differently. Then we say, okay, that's surprising that I had the talent hidden in me. And sometimes we kind of surprise ourselves saying, not sure why I behaved that way. I was so angry. I was so egoistic. I'm so prejudiced by this thing. We always keep ourselves surprised some of these characters. And I actually feel this way, that I behave certain way in a certain set of people, behave certain way in a certain set of people, and get myself confused. What is the real me, right? What is the nature of me, and what is that I am, right? Why I'm behaving differently in different set of people. So these are things that we always, I think most of us have the similar questions to ourselves, right? And without getting anything philosophical, the questions I'm trying to answer is, what defines our characters? How do we acquire these assumptions and prejudices? Like, and why is that we tend to be biased towards like anger, depression? Are these the choices that we are getting from the birth, from our parents, or inherit that, or the choices that we are getting after birth? And like, how are we getting these influences? And in addition to this, are there any external factors that is having an influence on us? I mean, we always talk about like energy imprints. We talk about like astrology. We always talk about like when I sit with the people who is meditating, I have the influence of that meditation, right? So what is the influence of those external factors around us? And with all those questions, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to get to is like at a particular point in time, the way I behave at that point in time is influenced by what? That's my question. Let me pause there to see if I'm getting my question correctly before I get into some of the details. How do I say? I mean, like, How do I see the chats? I'm trying to see the chats moving to see if there is anything.
Chat, just click the chat in.
1 minute, I'm coming there.
Click the chat button.
Okay, got it. I minimized it, so I didn't see that. Okay, just want to make sure that what I'm trying to speak today, does it make sense, or my question statement is clear? I don't want to lose people earlier on. Then, is it making sense? Did I lose everyone at the starting?
No, Dhana. Please unmute yourself. You can speak up.
Yes, we heard you. Yeah, when we make any actions, the state of mind that we are in makes a difference. And if I'm doing the same thing again, I might do something differently because I might know something different the next time I do the same thing. Is that what you're getting to?
Good point. So actually, I didn't say this earlier, right? I'm trying to avoid using the word like mind and consciousness. Is Venkatesan that's speaking. I'm doing that for a purpose because these are very loaded terms. Even though we think that we know those answers for it, but most often we kind of think about our brain and use mind, and we think about our emotions and use mind, and we always get a lot of things with this words, right? So what I'm trying to say today is, at this point in time, right, when I'm speaking to you, there is a certain set of characters that is defining me to speak to you, right? How are these characters inbuilt in me? And as I go into details, I could probably get a little bit more clarity on what I'm going to answer. So the questions again, if I could repeat, right? We have certain assumptions built in within ourselves, right? How are we getting these assumptions? And we actually sometimes get irritated, we get depressed. These kind of characters, right? We see at times, and at times we don't see it. How are we getting these characters? Like, what is defining these characters? And finally, right, the so-called me that I'm seeing myself, like what is influencing these characteristic types? So I'm trying to avoid all those other nuances like mind and consciousness, and just logically define like what makes the so-called me built within myself, right? That's my primary objective. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I already got a chance. You have to say yes now. But I think as we get into details, we'll probably get more and more clear what my questions are. And we'll take a pause again and define the questions towards the end of the session again. So in broad terms, right, I see that, okay, there are three things that define or influence us. And again, this might be stating the obvious, but let's state that, and then we'll go into details like what these are. I mean, like we all know that a lot of things in our memory, and I call this memory imprints. We have memory that we have got right from our birth, and certain memories are very obvious, certain memories are not obvious. But memory plays a very important role in defining how I'm behaving at this point in time, right? So that's one aspect. Second is, I mean, again, it's obvious too, the genetic structure, like when a child is born, it is behaving a particular fashion or a pattern at that point in time, and it doesn't have any memory at that point, right? It doesn't build up any experiences to form the memory, but it is still behaving in a certain fashion, and that is purely by the genetic inheritance, what it is getting from the parents or from ancestors. And third is the little metaphysical. We'll not go into detail, but the energy that is formed around us, right? When Bharat is doing meditation, that gives a lot of energy vibe around us, even though we are remotely connected, but that energy is definitely having influence. So that's energy imprints. So 3 things that I'm classifying is genetic, memory, and energy. And each one has its own nuances. It has its own way of influencing. But these 3, right, broadly classify or broadly influence a particular person's characters, how he is defining or how he is behaving at any point in time. And again, we'll go into detail on each one of these things. But to my earlier question, right, why we behave a particular way at a particular point in time is influenced by these 3 things. Now let me pause here to see if that kind of is making sense. It's early morning, so I hope I'm not making people to sleep. Okay, I'll continue. Presuming that the silence is like people are nodding the red. You can see that people are nodding the red. Okay, so let me get started. But please do feel free to chat anything if you want me to slow down, or if you want to pause or get into detail on any of these things. If not, I'll assume that you're all in line with me. Okay, so
Master, this
yes.
is Velu. Sorry, I was talking in the mute.
Sure.
What was the question again, please?
No, the question was like to see, okay, if you are following me, what my change thought is.
Yes, clearly. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Elimelech. Some assurance to me too. I could continue. Okay, so we said 3 things, right? That defines our behavior at any point in time: memory, genetic, and energy, right? And for this session, I was thinking more into detail of like memory and some of the genetic imprints, because memory is what actually is playing a bigger role in making a lot of our actions deterministic. And again, so memory itself, right, of twofold. If you could think about like what does define my memory, right? It could be either be passive or it could be either be active. And what I mean by passive is something that I formed my memory because someone told me. It could be either I saw something in a movie, or I could have got information from like speaking with you folks, something that I didn't experience firsthand, but I heard from someone else and I believed in that, and that is formed in my memory, right? And what I mean by memory is like I have my assumptions built in within me saying when I walk outside in a cold weather, it's going to be not convenient for me, my skin and my breathing, right? These are like active memory that I formed, right? And that memory has been in me so strong. So before I go outside, I check my temperature and see if I need to be prepared for it, right? So that's an active experience that I found in memory, and I react based upon that. Passive is like what I hear from others, and I started believing in that. That's also formed memory, and that also has to make a behavior change in it, right? And this again, right, could be direct or indirect, right? Direct is something that I know the direct influence on me. So one good example, right? Earlier in my teenagers, right, the girl that was staying next door, she used to like purple, right? And since she liked purple and I saw her in purple all the time, I started liking purple, right? So that memory in me is making to like purple because I got a direct experience, and that memory is so strongly in me, and that I like purple for no good reason, because someone was wearing purple and that person I liked it, right? So that's a direct. So if someone actually asks me a rapid fire question, what color you like, I'll say purple right away. And if I start thinking deeply why I like purple, I'll have to understand that it's coming from a memory which is like farther beyond, right? And that's a direct memory. Indirect memory is like something that I got from interpretations, but I don't really know why I formed that way. So again, when someone actually asks a rapid fire question to me asking, do you like toddlers? I might say answer is no. But when I think deeply, I might not be able to understand why I ate toddlers. It might be indirectly that I might be influenced by someone who ate toddlers, or it might have been some movie that I saw, but I don't know what it is. Basically, what I'm trying to say is like these memories, trying to analyze that deeper, we'll get an understanding like what are that memories and what are in that memories. And the reason I'm trying to classify this, like I've been classifying this into like two and two subcategories, right? One is passive, one is active, and direct and indirect. The reason I'm trying to give this classification is like for any behavior that we are doing, there's always some memory that has been imprinted in ourselves, right? Trying to make this classification, we'll get to the root cause, like what made us to form that memory. But once we get to the truth, it is always easy to then change ourselves if we wanted to change, or if we wanted to make that stronger, we could always do that. But without making that correlation, without making that understanding where that memory is being formed, we'll still be on the surface and not be able to change ourselves. So trying to emphasize this point, right? Without trying to get an understanding like why we have a memory that is, why we are having that memory imprinted on within ourselves, right? And how it is being formed, we'll not be able to analyze why we are behaving certain way. And so that's the reason understanding that is the crux of some of the behavioral patterns. And let me pause here again, because I spoke a little bit faster probably. Let me pause here to see if this kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's a good point.
Thanks for acknowledging. Okay.
Dana, this is Tarun. How different is the memory that you described is from the thought that we get? What is your perspective on that?
Again, I was trying to say that two things, right, Tarun? Let's assume that we are all like fifth grader and grandma, grandpa. The thought itself is a very big realm, Tarun. I'm trying to shy away from that thought and mind and consciousness for a particular deliberate reason. And if I get a chance to come again, I could probably go into that perspective. The thought is also influenced by a lot of other factors too. Memory is one influence to that. There are senses that is influencing that. So I'm trying to shy away from the thought analysis right now and trying to analyze the behavioral pattern, like what making me to behave.
We got that, but my question was like, is thought and memory same, or thought is a complement of memory, or memory is the complement of thought? Just that point.
Like, that's what I'm saying, right? That's still a lot of buzzwords in it. Thought itself is like a very loaded term, right? Again, thought is influenced by a lot of things. Memory is one of them. That's why I'm trying to shy away from the thought analysis right now and go deeper into like behavioral patterns. What is making me to behave that way? Again, I'm quoting away from the thought for a deliberate reason.
Thank you.
Good. That's good questions. So that is keeping me to speak more. Right? Okay. So let me summarize, right? So the direct and indirect, and then the active and passive. Those memory imprints that goes a long way. And the idea is to see, okay, when I'm doing certain things, trying to understand the root cause of like this memory that I'm having is coming from which part of my memory imprints. Is that something that I directly got influenced? If it is directly got influenced, then it is very clear. Then I know that, okay, this is my influence on me. I could change the pattern going forward, or I could make it sense, right? If it is indirect, definitely it's much more trickier. Because indirect could be having a combination of like whether it is coming from my memory imprint, or it's something that I got inherited from my genetic thing. That's actually some of the dilemma or ambiguity comes in, right? And we'll get into details on that too. But having that distinction, direct and indirect, would help us to derive further where the indirectness is coming from. And then active and passive are also very important, right? Active means that I have got it firsthand that. So then I know that, okay, I could totally rely on that. Like when I talked about the cold weather example, that's very active because I walked outside and I got the frostbitten. I know that it is something that actively I got in my memory, and that's something that I experienced firsthand. When it is passive, again, that's where actually the dilemma comes in. If it is passive, the passive might be coming from seeing from a movie or reading from a book or listening to others or believing in someone that said to me, right? Those things, again, will make us behave certain way without us knowing that. So summarize it, right? Active memory and direct memory are much more easier to analyze. Passive memory and indirect memory are the ones which is causing confusion, or the ones which is causing us to behave certain ways without us knowing why it is why we are behaving that way. So in the memory imprint, that I'm trying to summarize in two ways. If you're trying to analyze our own character traits, and if you're able to relate that into a direct memory or an active experience, that's very good. Then we could classify that, okay, that's the reason why I'm being that way. But if I'm not able to do that, if I'm classifying that as a passive or indirect, then we have to further classify it, saying, okay, why the passive memory is accurate to me, and if it is indirect, like why I got that indirect relationship. That makes sense so far? Yes, Morgan. Okay. Since I'm not showing my face, I don't know if people are not showing the face, because I could get some nods or some chat responses, make sure that I'm on the right track. Okay, very good. Let me continue. Hope it is silence is a good silence. Okay, so now coming back into the indirect and the passiveness, right? Why we are behaving certain ways. So the way I mean, like I was thinking to myself, like if some memory on me or if some behavior pattern on me, right? If I try to classify that, and I couldn't get an answer because I didn't know why I like purple. The example that I gave before was made up example. But if someone asked me and I like purple color, right? And I was thinking deeper into myself and I couldn't get a reason why I like purple. Then I couldn't get an answer to it, right? So how do I get an answer to it? I mean, liking color is one thing. That's not a big difference in life. But being creative, being more disciplined, being like interested in numbers, self-motivated, these are some of the characteristics that you might not be able to get an answer. Opposite side, right? If someone is lazy or someone is lethargic or someone is always like, procrastinating, they're not doing things that time, always wait for the last minute, right? These characters things also, right? Why is that we are having the characters? Is it something that I directly acquired because that's the way I was brought up and that's the way my friends used to be in my earlier childhood, or that's the way I got influenced by my parents? What is that? Or is it something that I'm having a primary character that I'm defined within myself from my genes, right? So now that's what actually we want to get into more details. Like some of the primary characteristics that I'm having seen myself, and I don't have a way to explain that is my coming from my direct memory imprints. That means that is something that I'm getting it passively, either through genetic imprints or through some of the passive memory that got passed along. So now the next question is like, how do we distinguish some of the behavioral patterns into these two classifications? Whether it is coming from genetic imprints or it is coming from my indirect or passive memory that I acquired. So that's the next question that we need to get into. That makes sense? So let me summarize, right? So the way I was starting my analysis is for my behavioral pattern, the memory is playing a bigger role because the so-called experience that has been like gone through me so for a period of time has formed itself as a memory, and I have made all my calculations, analysis, everything, saying that, okay, if I encounter this scenario, I'm going to behave this way, right? That's what my memory is giving the answer to it for a particular behavior pattern. Now, the first question that I'm trying to delve into is like, how do I break that and break it into saying, okay, why did I acquire that memory, whether it's the indirect memory or direct memory, right? Then when it's direct, I said, okay, it is very clear to me. I know why I'm behaving that way. I could change it or if I want to influence it. But if it is indirect, that's when actually we are trying to get into detail. What is that which made me to get that indirect memory or a passive memory that makes me to behave in a particular pattern when I'm encountered suddenly, right? And that could be either it is from my experience that I got in memory, or it could be from my genetic. So now we need to further analyze to classify whether it is my genetic imprints or it's my memory imprints. Because once we get to that point, then we know that, okay, oh, this is my genetic behavioral pattern that I got it. And either I could change it or I could further strengthen it. But at least I know that, okay, that is something that I acquired from my genetic thing. Or if it is indirect memory that I got, that's much more easier. Okay, that is not something that is inbuilt in my genetic framework. That is something that I got it acquired over a period of time. Now it is time for me to change it. But having that classification will help us to understand to go to the next level to how to make the changes.
Yeah, just to confirm, right? So
Sure.
direct and indirect and active and passive are same, right?
Direct, indirect, and active and passive, not really same, but they're kind of classifications. That's a very good question actually asking, because when I'm writing that too, right, I was thinking similar lines. If indirect and passive are the same, and direct and active are the same, right? What I meant by active is that I first-hand experienced it. That's what my active thing, right? Direct is, it might not have to be like actively got it in the first hand. I could have got it passively, but I know that directly. I know that when I'm able to understand, okay, why I'm being that way, it's the direct, I know that it's directly on me. Indirect means that it is coming through multiple forms. I don't have the root cause where it is coming from, but it's from indirect means. That's the reason I'm saying it is indirect. So they are like two different subcategories. They are like kind of, you could have direct, indirect, and within direct you have like active and passive, like that.
Okay.
If you're what I'm saying.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but thanks for asking that. It helped me to clarify my earlier point. And
I have.
Yes, sure. Okay.
Okay. Suppose somebody came and put some medicine on me and remove all my memory. So, so I cannot walk, I cannot speak. Even I don't understand what you're speaking also, because everything's lost. Even I cannot move my hand. Everything's lost.
Right.
If it is this case, if it is I'm going to like a vegetable, or if I'm going to like a coma stage, how it is described. If in New York, if you might heard, there is a lady in coma, and she got a baby. I mean, somebody did something and she got baby. How body gave birth? How the child born? Let's say,
right.
Where is the memory? Where is the
So when we started the discussion, Ilmari, I was saying that there are three things, right? It's not just memory alone that is making our behavioral patterns. And again, I'm trying to classify our behavioral patterns, right? Not trying to get into metaphysical, because there are other things that will influence also. I did mention that there are genetic imprints, because even if you forgetting the memory that is being lost, right? If you take a baby that is just born, it is still having a memory, right? It's still having a behavioral pattern. It doesn't form any memory, it hasn't got any experience, but it's still behaving a certain way, right? How it is behaving a certain way, it's coming from a genetic skeleton framework that it got. And the third thing that I didn't go into detail, Ermani, is on the energy imprint, right? The energy imprint is something that is influenced by the energy of the people and the energy, not just people, energy is like a little bit metaphysical around us, right? That is little deeper. What you're asking would be primarily going into that kind of mode. And I'm trying to shy away from that for a particular reason, because I'm trying to be more logical in terms of a behavioral pattern, right? Because what I'm trying to answer is, if I'm able to understand why I'm behaving a way when I'm speaking with you, that helps me to understand much more of myself, and I could refine myself, and I could understand my behavioral patterns. Once I have that basic very much strong, then I could go into the next level of metaphysical. Even though I know that I'm going to be angry when I encounter this scenario, but I didn't encounter angry when I'm with a certain people, because then I know that, okay, there's an energy field around me that is influencing me. That is a good way for me to explain that behavior, right? But before I get into that energy field and metaphysical realm, I want to get myself known, like why I'm behaving certain way for some of the normal day-to-day activities and some of the default characteristics that I'm exhibiting so far. I didn't answer your question fully, but that's for a particular reason, because that's a little bit out of my scope of like what I'm speaking today.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So also when I started this discussion, I don't know how much time it is given to me, Tarun and Morgan. It's 30 minutes past 9.
Yeah, we'll come.
30 more minutes. You got 30 more minutes, Dana. Go ahead.
30 more minutes. Very good. Thank you. Just getting okay. So now where we paused earlier, right? Before the questions are like, how do we get to understand more on the primary traits, right? The primary traits and the derived or acquired traits. So what I mean by primary traits and acquired traits? Primary traits are the things that I got from my genetic foundations, right? Derived traits are the things that I acquired after I am born, right? That is being influenced by people around me or environment, books and whatnot. Trying to make the distinction, what is my primary traits, what is my derived traits, will go a long way, because if it is primary traits, then I need to fight a little bit more if I need to change that, because my DNA is like so strongly inbuilt within myself, right? It's not easy for me to change that. Whereas if it is a derived trait, that's something that is easily changeable because it's not embedded in my basic skeleton. So how do we find out, okay, but what is the derived and what is the primary trait? So let's ask our question, right? If I'm, I could be a disciplined guy. I mean, like we could take any characteristic, but I'm just quoting one example of being disciplined, right? Some people, if you see, right, they are like so much core to the discipline. What I mean by that is they'll be like very perfect on like timing. They'll be very perfect on like keeping up what they said, and they'll be like I don't know what the right way to explain discipline in a very simpler terms. But it's more like, okay, if I see my father, right, when he comes back from office back in those days, he will always come in a particular pattern. I mean, it's not an actual discipline. It's following a particular pattern. It comes in, walks in a particular way. I mean, like he changes his dress, and the dress that he puts back into anchor, right? It's all like properly ordered, right? He doesn't just casually do things out of order, right? So, I mean, and we do see people like that. They'll be like so much upset when certain things are not put in certain order. So, is this discipline or order, right, that people are doing? Is it something that they are doing by themselves because they enjoy doing that, or it is something that is built within themselves from their birth onwards? So, the way how we could distinguish that stuff, right? Let's say that I am surrounded by people who came from military. So let's assume that if you're all like people coming from military background, and I'm going to be living with you and day and night for the next 2 or 3 months. So even though I'm not disciplined right now, in the next 2 or 3 months, in and out with you folks, what will happen is like I'll be forced to wake up in the morning. I'll be forced to walk in a particular pattern. I'll be very disciplined, or I'll be like so much used to a routine. First one day I'll eat it. Second day I'll eat it. Third day I'll eat it. I'll be eating that for like the first 1 week or so. After that, I will say that there is no choice to it. I'll start changing myself. After a month, I will be used to the routine. After 2 months, I'll be kind of set in the routine. Third month, I'll be so much into it. I'll be looking as though that I'm one among you. I got that derived pattern within myself, even though I was not that kind of person earlier on. So let's say that I'm with you folks for like 1 year, and that's the way I'm going to be like that forever, right? So I derived this trait very well. So let's say that after 1 year, I'm out of touch with you folks. I've just come back to my normal life. There is no force. There is nothing for me to be in that kind of disciplined order. When I come back home, first 1 month, it's so much in my memory, it's so much in my blood, everything, my muscle memory, everything is like having that so much what is ordered. and I will do that as a routine. For first 1 month, I will do it. Second month, I will do it. At some point in time, I will realize that, okay, that is not the so-called myself, right? And then I'll slowly try to change that order. I'll slowly change that. I will relax a little bit here and there, relax a little bit here and there. And after probably 3 or 4 months, I will get back to my normal self. The reason I got to by normal self, and I'm using my word normal self, is that's a derived character that I got because I was influenced with the folks around me that made me to do that. But if I'm not with that influence, I will go back to my original self, because that's not the so-called me, right? Whereas if you have a different person who is not doing this kind of disciplined activity, right? But it is somewhere ingrained in his or DNA and genetic things. If the person is acquainted with folks like you with all the military background, the first day it will be surprising. The second day it will be a little bit surprising, but from third or fourth day onwards, you will get into the mode very easily and very rhythmically. And even if you have the person outside of that influence, you still continue to do that. He or she will continue to do that because it is in the DNA. So what I'm trying to get from here is understanding which is the primary trait of myself and which is the derived trait of myself is going to make my distinction. What is the so-called my behavioral pattern that I'm normally doing or my naturally will be doing, and what are the things that I'm doing as a result of influence from me? Yes, that will go a long way, right? And again, I'll give some more example. When I'm with the family members, right, I'll behave one way, but when I'm outside, I'll behave different way, right? And they both are equivalent for me, right? It'll be day and night. Someone actually seeing me with my family will be surprised. Okay, how come you are so this and this? My same family, when they're seeing me with office colleagues or with someone else, they'll be so surprised. How come you are so this and this, right? You are so short-tempered, but you're not short-tempered here. And they'll be saying, okay, you are so what is that? Talkative, but you're not talkative at this environment. I'm the same self, but I'm behaving 2 different ways in 2 different modes, right? And why I'm behaving that way? Because what is happening is my derived traits are taking a precedence when I'm in one set of people. My natural primary trait is taking what is that? More prominence when I'm with a set of other people. It's the same me. It's just going 2 different ways. But what is happening is I am not distinguishing which is my primary trait, which is my derived trait. What it means for me is I need to take a step back, saying, okay, if I'm not with the influence of these people, how I'm going to be behaving myself, right? Once I get that understanding, then I know which is my primary trait, because that's what I would like to do without the influence of any other people. I think I might have confused people with the primary and derived traits. Let me pause here to see, did I get my point clearly, or if not, I would love to go into detail.
I think I got it.
Thank you so much. That is, what's your name? I think you've been so
My name is
helping me so far.
My name is Kasi.
Kasi, okay. Thank you, Kasi. Others, any comments, perspectives?
Yeah, I got it too. Yeah.
Okay, great. No, that's
Okay,
a good acknowledgement. Yes.
Okay, it's a very good topic. What my comment is, what I'm understanding so far, we are all like a machine so far, conditioned by so many environment and everything, the way we brought it up. So that's why we are behaving according to whatever the condition. It's all based on condition.
Right. I'm trying to unravel the conditions. What you said is a perfect analogy. I'm trying to unravel that what made me to be conditioned that way, right? Because once we understand that the conditions are not conditions, why we are conditioned that way, it is easy to change that if we wanted to change it. And I got so much pleasure thinking about the derived and primary trait. And one way to examine that, right, which is the derived trait, which is the primary trait. And this is kind of some kind of a matrix that I was trying to build, but I didn't get much success with that. It's let's say that, okay, I could look at my father, I could look at my grandfather, I could look at my mom, grandmom, aunt, some kind of family tree, right? And I could see that, okay, there are certain characteristic traits that I got from these folks, right? So my physical appearance, I could resemble to more my maternal grandfather, right? And I could see that, okay, that's where I get some of my genetic in that. And I could see some of my behavioral patterns in terms of like my disciplinary activities, my creativity could be coming from my father side, right? I could, when I draw a matrix, I could relate some of my actions to some of coming from these things. And once I see that, okay, I'm getting a good resemblance on my artistic side coming from my father's side, and when I'm looking at my physical structure, I'm getting from my maternal side, right? And physical structure, it's only so much I could do, so I'm not bothered about that. Then I went into detail of my, like, what is that I'm getting from my my father or paternal side, on my creativity, on my, like, these are some of the softer skills, right? Communication, creativity, athletic, ordered, structured, self-motivated, interested in numbers, right? These are the things that I'm naturally inclined to. When I look at my father, he actually had similar attributes, right? And some of the things that I didn't know, when I was asking my father, I was able to understand, okay, he was interested in it. It's just that I was not experienced or I was not exposed to that so far. But I knew that, okay, I would be able to get my natural rhythm if I'm exposed to that. Let's say that, okay, I am athletic for a good reason, right? And right from my childhood, I was very athletic. Even though I was not forced to, I will be like athletic. And I found similar behavior pattern in my father too. So that gives me good understanding, okay, I'm getting that thing coming from my father. That's my genetic thing also. And even if I'm not forced to do it, I'll be like loving to like jogging around. I'll be loving to do those kind of athletic activities. So now I know that, okay, it's my natural tendency, right? And what I would do next is, like, I would try to strengthen that, right? Because I know that, okay, that's very natural for me. Even if no one is asking me to do it, I love to do that. On the other hand, let's say that I'm not creative at all, but I'm more based upon facts, right? I will be able to connect some of the facts together, but I'll not be able to creatively think through like writing a story or anything like that, right? And then I'm checking with my father, he is similar pattern too. Then I know that, okay, that is not my strong forte, meaning writing a story or creating fictions, like those kind of things is not my strong forte, right? What I will do is, like, I could cultivate that activity by being with people around me who was thinking in those lines, if I wanted to do it. If I feel that, okay, that's something that I feel that I have urge of doing that, I could cultivate that. But I have to understand that, okay, that is not very strongly me. It's not strong character of me. So I have to make a decision whether I wanted to cultivate that from this point onwards, or whether I stop that and I say, okay, that's not going to be naturally me. Let me not do that. Let me find out the other things that I could be naturally getting myself stronger, and I will try to do that. So that gave me a perception. What are the things that I wanted to cultivate? What are the things that I know that, okay, I'm not naturally strong or I'm naturally inherited, but how do I get it from here? It's again my choice. That I don't have to be creative so far, but I could cultivate that activity if I wanted to be interested in it. But I am making a natural decision to go that route going forward, right? But if I know that, okay, I'm naturally creative, it's even stronger for me, right? Even stronger for me to do that. And by doing this analysis, right, certain things that you could find out is, I got a lot of resemblance from my dad in some of these artistic talents. And my father happens to have an interest in numbers. I'm just making it up, right? Then I could probably say that, okay, is it something that I could also strengthen my interest in numbers, right? Because if you see certain people, they will do a lot of numerical computations, numerical calculations very easily. I mean, like, you could have seen people going into the grocery stores, and they will be able to calculate or numerically add and multiply everything very faster, right? Because the left side of the brain for them is like much more analytical, counting much more strongly, and it is doing faster calculation than what you could expect. And when you see that, okay, that is something that you could normally do, and you see your some of your paternal, maternal, where you got some of your characteristics doing that, then you know that, okay, that's something that you could naturally do it. On the other side, if you feel that, okay, you struggle with those kind of calculations or computations, you always need to have a calculator, you always need to do that, then you know that, okay, it is something that you are not stronger in. Your left side of the brain is not having that kind of genetic connections to make that kind of computation stronger, right? It's okay to accept that fact, right? It's okay to accept the fact and say, okay, how we could complement that, or it's how we could supplement that with other attributes, rather than trying to make yourself stronger in that. Making the distinction very earlier on then will help you to understand, okay, where I wanted to make focus on to get myself strengthened. This is kind of the crux of what I was trying to get into. So let me pause here to see, okay, what if I got some of that clear.
Actually, like, the things that you explained, it is clear, but so I have this confusion, right? So see, for the same example, right? For the same example, in terms of, like, doing calculations, so I would see, like, using calculator, even though, like, I'm best in, calculation or whatever it is. So I would think, okay, using calculator is a smart way and in a quick way to do it.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm not sure, like, I'm going from top to bottom, but you are talking about bottom to, like, top. But I'm a little bit confused on that part.
Right. And this I'm like, probably there are a couple of reasons, right? One thing is, like, I gave a lot of facts in a very short duration of time, and even when I was thinking about it, I was very much confused too. So let me try to take a slower grasp into that, right? And again, the point is not about, like, the example that I'm quoting. I'm quoting the examples just to see, okay, if I could make a distinction on that, right? The point I'm trying to make is how to find yourself, what characteristic traits that you inherited from your genetic makeup, and what characteristic traits are that you derived after you through experiences that you're living in the world, right? Because they both are powerful. I'm not distinguishing anything that they're not powerful. They both are powerful, but trying to differentiate between, like, what is something that your genetic makeup itself is giving is going to boost yourself naturally. So what I mean by that is, like, before coming to computations, let me take that athletic example, right? Some people are very athletic naturally, right? They have their physical built up in such a way, and they have their bigger factors, much more oriented towards, like, being athletic. They would love to run, they would like to jog, and all the stuff like that, right? So these people, even if you're not having them influence with anyone else who are runners and everyone, they will still love to do that. And when you analyze the patterns that is coming from the ancestor hereditary, right, and you will see that, okay, your father or someone was having that trend and something that is passed along to you. Having that distinction, finding it earlier on, then you know that, okay, your muscles, a lot of things are programmed already with that athletic tenderness, athletic tendency. And that means that you could get to the next level much more easily than being to develop that. Right. So that is something that you will be able to strongly attest to yourself. Okay, it's something that I am strong in because my body makeup is already coming up with the natural tendency because I got that inherited. So that's athletic is like some kind of physical quality, right? But your question is more around, like, the let's say the calculations part of it, right? What I mean by calculations is, let's say that, okay, my genetic makeup, right, in such a way that the way my left brain is structured, it could connect some of the dots much more faster, making these computations much more faster and elegantly and naturally. Let's say that it's structured like that. But as I was growing up, I never actually happened to exercise that part of the brain that much. And I was using my calculator for much more of my daily needs. So I never actually knew that I had the strength in it, right? But by doing this analysis, let's say that, okay, I'm trying to analyze my parents, what are the strengths, and trying to analyze, like, how they are, like, what are the qualities that I got from them. when I'm doing that kind of thing, I was supposed to know from my father that, okay, he actually has this numerical calculations that he does very faster. And when we speak with him also, I know that he's doing that. Then I realized, is this something that I could be having myself too? It's just that I never been exposed or I never been able to practice that so far, right? Then there's a choice for me to do. Either experiment that and see if that is something that I wanted to do. And if I wanted to do that, I could take to the next level. Or I would say that, okay, in this world, there's not much for me to get that numerical calculations much more faster. I could always live with my calculator. I have a smartwatch. I have a smartphone. There's no need for me to develop that characteristic, right? I could live with that, right? Live without that. So that's a choice I could make and go from that point onwards. Or I could take a different choice saying, okay, probably there's a possibility that I might have that character in me because I resemble a lot of my traits from my father. And I could experiment for next 2 or 3 days, right? Doing some of the calculations here and there. And when I see that, okay, my brain is reacting much more faster and it is able to get some of these things much more naturally, then I know that, okay, that's my natural state that I already got from my genetic makeup. And now I have a choice to go from this point onwards to develop that to the next level or not. So the question is like not about the competition, that's more example. Trying to see, okay, what are the traits that I might have already got naturally, but I might not have been realizing that so far, right? And from this point onwards, like, how do I understand that and take to the next level? I mean, did I get my point clearly, Kasi, now?
Yeah, I got it actually. Even like, you know, in the first time also, I clearly understood like, you know, what you are trying to say. But, you know, now
Okay.
like, you know, little bit like, you know, more clarity. I got more clarity on that. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Any other perspective, feedback?
How do we lead to change, as you mentioned before?
Say it again.
You mentioned that we can change. We can take a position of change. How do we?
Right. How do we change it? Right. Very good question. I'm going to be honest here. I don't have the full answer to it, but in my thinking so far, right. What I've been trying to get to a point is like once I get to the root, like what is making me to behave a particular way. I think that is the crux of problem statement. Once I understand, okay, I'm behaving this way because I got this inherited, then I know that, okay, there is certain makeup that I already got it. I need to do certain things to change it. But the change is going to be much more, resistant because it's coming from my genetic makeup. But let's say that it's not my genetic makeup, but I got it directly through my experiences throughout my lifetime, right? And once I understand, okay, it is my experience through my lifetime, then I'm able to dissect saying, okay, it is my direct experience that I got because I saw someone doing this in front of me or I myself experienced it. Then I know that, okay, it is something that I need to change that understanding. Let's say that, okay, when I'm a small kid, right, I was beaten up by my brother. I'm just making it up, don't get me wrong. Beaten up by my brother. And that made the experience to me saying, okay, you don't want to have a sibling because sibling will always be a bothersome for you, right? Let's say that, okay, that's the way I got my memory programmed to me. When I got married, when I'm able to have kids, I wanted to stop with only one kid, right? At that point in time, when someone actually asked me why you're not getting a second kid, if I don't have my understanding, that's because of my that experience when I was a child, then I will not get a good answer to it. I'll just beat around the bush giving some random answers. But if I'm able to relate to my direct experience, then I know that, okay, it is experience. And once I understand that is an experience that I got, it's easy for me to change that perspective. I could speak with people to say, okay, that's not the case with every other family. And I could change my perspective. Then I would be okay with having 2 kids in my lifetime, right? But without understanding what made me to get the direct experience, I will not be able to change my behavior pattern. And I just talked about my sibling here, for example, Carol, but it could be any other thing, right? Any other thing. But making that understanding, whether it is a direct experience that formed in my memory or the indirect experience, which is where actually it becomes trickier. getting that root cause, understand why it is coming to us in a particular way, then you could always twist it, change it, and whatever you want to do with that. But without making that understanding, without getting that understanding, it will be always be tough to change. You could always change it. I mean, people will be advising you and you could change it. But after some time, you will get back to your original self. That's the reason why you see people changing, but then they always come back to original self because they haven't really found the root cause, making them to behave a certain way. And that's the reason why they're not able to change permanently. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
It's interesting. I just have a question. What if the strengths, the primary traits that you analyze are different from your actual likes? Say you don't have that trait in you, but you want to become something.
Oh, you're asking a question for myself? Or you're just asking a general question?
No, general question. I know I don't have that trait. Okay, say for myself. I know I don't have that trait, but there is a like in me, maybe from childhood, just the way you said that people get influenced. I'm influenced and I like to be that. But I know that trait is not there. So there's like regret because I'm trying, but I'm not getting there. So I don't know. I don't know how to match the strength with the likes. The mind is different, right? So I don't know how to match it. I understand it may not match always, but I don't know.
That's it. If I'm getting your question correctly, what you're saying is you analyze yourself and you get a good understanding that there's some trait that's not natural in you. You said that you wanted to be good in music. I'm just making it up again. And but
let me just give you an example. Say I like dance very much. Okay, I like to dance a lot. But I know I'm not a good dancer because I'm not a natural dancer. But I really like dance and I want to dance. So I don't want to let go of it because I know I cannot dance.
Right. But what is your question? You wanted to pursue dancing? Is that what you're asking? Or you said
yes, I want to pursue dancing, but the liking is there. But I know I'm not a natural dancer. So there is a mismatch. But I'm not able to let go because I know I like it. I still like it.
Right. No, that's nothing wrong with it, right? And this is not trying to say that we should not do it. What I was trying to actually say is like you have a liking in dancing, even though you feel that you are not natural dancer. Why did you get that liking? I mean, I'm trying to get to most of the point of like, why did you get that liking? Is that liking coming because you got it some infatuation earlier on in your life cycle, or it is something that you kind of motivated, you feel that, okay, dancing is going to give you this kind of benefits here and there, right? There is going to be some reason why you get that liking. I'm trying to understand that liking is coming from some kind of root cause, right? What experience is making it do that? Once you get that understanding that regardless you wanted to dance, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong in it, right? But once you understand that liking is coming from a particular thing, right? Then you could think about that understanding to see if that is really something meaningful for you to do. Let's say that, okay, you got the liking for dancing because back when you were a kid or back when you are surrounded with people who are all good dancers, you felt that, okay, dancing is something that everyone is doing and you need to do that too. It might have been peer pressure. It might have been like a result of like some other factors that made you to come to that conclusion of dancing is good for you, right? Once you think that, okay, it is coming from a peer pressure and not from, I'm just making it up again, not pointing, then you know that, okay, it's not something that you really wanted to do, but you are kind of cultivated to get to that point. Then you could make a natural choice whether you wanted to still do it or not do it. So my point I'm trying to make here is what you wanted to do are all good things, but trying to get to the point like why you're thinking that you want to do that, right? Getting that point of understanding why you want to do that will give a better understanding for yourself. Then you could decide whether you want to do it or not. Because some of the things might be like influence that you might not really want to do if otherwise given a choice. Some of them are like good influence, right? But I think you have to classify that before you make a decision. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think I get it. So so the point is when you know what your primary trait is and from where it is coming, you can just work on
Yeah.
it or decide if you want
Yeah.
to proceed with it, like build on it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well summarized. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, Dana was a question.
Just to interject, we are past 10 o'clock, so most likely this is going to be the last question. Anyone wants to stay back can stay back, but I'm just letting you know the time is 10 now. Usually we end the session by then. Continue, Venkatesh.
Sure. Actually, I mean, like this is something that is a little bit, even though it is on the surface, like too much information is also not good for us. So I would also try to take a step back and, if possible, come at some other time, and we could reiterate some of the points and go into details some of the things. But Venkatesh, please ask your question though. If I could definitely take a step back.
Okay. Say that again. Can I ask the question now?
Oh yeah, please ask a question. What I'm saying is, like, since I've been speaking for like almost 1 hour, we have loads of information within ourselves. So I would try to pause here, but I want to pause after your question.
Okay, got you. So I think I was following along. I was trying to categorize. So you told me there are 3 things for the behavior patterns, like memory, genetic, and energy. I kind of understood the memory and the genetic part, but I kind of genetic and energy seems to be like intertwined. So I just want clarity on energy specific.
Right. I'm not sure if it is intertwined, Venkatesh. That's my understanding. We could a little bit speak for briefly here, and next session we could speak more in detail. Just hold on 1 minute. Parents are calling from India. 1 minute. So energy imprints, what I was trying to say here, Venkatesh, right, is like the energy field around us, right? I mean, whether it is like the cosmic or whether it is like the meditation field that you are creating within yourself that is influencing me. It is external to me that I'm not able to explain with any other reasons. That's what I'm attributing to energy imprints, right? Whereas genetic imprints, is a totally different way I'm thinking, right? Genetic imprints is like that is the skeleton that I'm born with, that is giving me the natural tendency for certain ways to act for myself. But it is within myself. I'm already born with that. Energy imprints is being influenced by people or other things around me, right? You could always say that, okay, when I'm born, the nature of the state of astrology or cosmic around me is making me to come that way. I'm trying to shy away from that for a particular reason, meaning that my DNA, right? That has certain characteristic features, like that is making my brain to behave certain way when it is experiences a certain problem statement, right? That's what I was calling a genetic imprints. The energy imprints are like a little bit external factors that influenced me or influencing me over a period of time, and I'm trying to study that separately. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yep, that helps. Thanks, Dhanasekaran.
But I really wanted to thank everyone for listening to me, and some of the questions that you're asking assures me that I'm able to make some sense out of it.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Thank you, Dana. At this point, I would say, let's take the idea of what Dana said about different kinds of memory and do the analysis, not thought analysis, memory analysis for 1 week. We'll continue the session next week. Do ask questions well and be prepared for asking questions, and do also come with a natural solution that we have within ourselves, and we'll take it further. So we'll continue with this session next week as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.